Hey everybody, this is Perch, and we're continuing with doing numbers, and there are a lot of them. You all been awesome. You've been requesting a bunch of different comics to do the reviews on, and I'm trying to get a good spread of comics that have done poorly, comics that have done well, comic books that are surprising. I'm trying to get some different curves out there for you because as we get into this, as I do more, you're going to notice that comics kind of fit into three categories. There's comics that start hot and then just immediately plummet and lose their audience. There's comics that seem to be triggered by certain events where things are going along okay, and then certain things either make them drop or rise. Or you have things where the comic starts out and quickly stabilizes and is considered a success. So today we're going to look at a comic that I think most people consider a success, and the numbers will prove out that that's a right way to look at this title. Still, what is interesting is I think some people have the impression that this comic is actually doing better than it is. It's a strong selling book, no doubt about it. But I've heard some people describe this book in ways that are not accurate in terms of how well it's doing. It's certainly doing well. It's not doing like ridiculously well like some people I think believe, but it's still, I mean, no publisher would be upset with this book. So of course, if you clicked on this video, you know we're talking about Donny Cates and Venom. So, for a little bit of background, what was going on here, Venom was a series that had been tossed around a couple different writers. Rick Remender, in particular, had the Venom Flash Thompson book that was critically acclaimed. Still, the sales were still around 20 to 30,000. And then eventually, Robbie Thompson picked up the book, and we did Venom Space Knight. Venom at the time had joined the Guardians of the Galaxy, and it was still Flash Thompson. A lot of things going on there. Prior to Cates coming out of this book, though, Venom sales had fallen underneath 20,000 copies, and it was Venom Space Knight had not really taken off, I would say, in terms of a book. So we're going to present the numbers a little bit differently than what we've done in the past, but you'll see why here in a minute as I continue to refine these models, give you what you want, answer kind of some of the things that you've asked, but we get into. Here's Venom. And so the series starts off with 225,000 plus copies sold, and it has the predictable Marvel drop. Now, what's important to note here is that, one, this is a scary drop. However, it's very much Marvel style. If you compare it against what DC does, DC also has the first issue drop, but nothing compared to Marvel. Marvel stuff's dropping 100,000 or more. And what's funny is I'm wrong, absolutely wrong, in that I pointed out that with Thor #1 from Donny Cates dropped 100,000 readers in 100,000 sales in 1 month from 1 to 2. And I'm like, that's insane. I don't know anything else that's doing that. Well, Venom as an example. And really that's pretty common now for Marvel. My mind was thinking a little bit further back. Venom launched 225 and then immediately went to 73,000 with issue 2. So that's about 150,000 copy drop. So quite a healthy drop there for Venom. So what I've done here, and you can see with the trend line that I'm starting to draw across and show right out the bat, is I'm actually doing the trend from issue 2 on. It becomes ludicrous, and I'll show a stat at the very end around why counting #1 issues is pointless, with Marvel at least. With DC, it's a little bit more useful of a number, but with Marvel, there's no point. There's variance, there's a bunch of other things that are going on there. But if we look at the trend this way, it makes a lot more sense. So as you see, when we had last reliable numbers, issue 24 back in March, we had 43,000 copies sold, which I think is lower than a lot of people suspect, because I hear a lot of people talking about how they believe Venom is in the 70s to 80s. It's one of Marvel's strongest books. It is one of Marvel's stronger books, but still, issue 24, 43,000 copies sold. So let's go into the numbers. Let's just get rid of #1 completely and just look at this with a more healthy view. So great. Here we have it from issue 2 to issue 24. I am counting the annuals in here, which is maybe the right thing to do, maybe not. I don't know. I go back and forth. But what you see in this comic is two things. One, it wavers up and down from the 80,000 range at its peaks down to kind of the low 50s and occasionally dipping into the 40s. But generally, this title, it's bouncing around. So on one level, the trend line is pretty flat, and you'll see that the trend is actually fairly healthy. However, it is bouncing around a lot. So we go from issue 2, 73,000. We hit a low point at issue 4 at 51,000. which is kind of following a traditional Marvel drop. Now, what's happening is by issue 4, retailers are starting to order in comics. I think issue number 1 and number 2 came out the same month, as I recall. Actually, I can tell you that for absolute sure. No, issue 2 and issue 3 came out the same month, because why not? It's Marvel, and who knows why they do the things they do sometimes in shipping. But what you saw here was retailers were ordering like they normally order for Marvel Comics, and they realized when issue 1 came out, they were doing their orders for issue 5. And so you see them hike the orders back up again. And as you see demand come in, you see the orders climb right back up. It's a complete bounce to where issue number 7 is coming in well above where issue number 2 was. And so then you see, so as that's climbing, you see some interest kind of, I don't want to say wane, but then you're seeing retailers probably with more copies on their hands. You see it going back down again. And what you see from this chart, as we go to issue 10, bouncing back up to issue 11, you see some War of the Realms tie-ins coming in there at issue 14. You see that annual is almost the low point of the series. This one wasn't even written by Donny Cates, so it's in here for laughs, but it doesn't really mean anything. And then we get back up to issue 20 and 19. It's benefiting at this point from the Absolute Carnage, and then we get down to Venom Island. And that's kind of how the series wraps up. So it bounces around. But what it clearly shows is that retailers are consistently chasing this comic. And this is something we haven't seen before in these analyses, where the readership is ducking in and out based on events, things like War of the Realms, things like Absolute Carnage, Stegman on art, and other things. You're seeing readers not consistently follow this title like you're seeing other things. You're seeing them come in for special events or come in to do things and then leave. And so retailers are constantly increasing and decreasing their orders. That's why you have such a bouncy picture here. This is a book that, as a retailer perspective, on one hand, Venom is a hot seller, and sales, anecdotally, I'm not showing the numbers here because they're not reliable, but from what we can tell in the lead up to King in Black and everything else, sales have climbed. This Venom in the Future storyline probably is coming into low 50s, but still, sales have come back up. The challenge is, I think the perception is that Venom is this very reliable high seller title for Marvel, and it's not. The picture clearly does not indicate that. Now, is it one of their stronger sellers? Yes. Is it a consistent month-by-month, predictably stronger seller? Nah, not really. And by the way, I'm not including the reprints in here. There were certainly tons of reprints for this Venom run, but they're not as strong as you would think. They're not huge numbers. They're not putting up like 10,000 copies or even 5,000 copies for the reprint. So it doesn't change this picture much. If we're looking at the trend line, though, we're looking at 74,000 to 62,000. That's a pretty flat trend line. It's one of the flatter ones we've seen. And that means this is a 16% trending drop. Now, once again, I suspect that's a surprise to many people who would believe that Venom, is constantly strong. But if you look there, and you look at the lows to the highs, you'll just notice there, as the series moves on, there's more lows and highs. If I take that annual out, and to be fair, I'd want to take both annuals out, but if particularly I take that second annual out, then the trend line goes up to a 14% trending drop, which is a little bit better, but not terribly. It doesn't impact the picture too much. All in all, though, that's a healthy drop. So if you're comparing it just to Aaron's Avengers, which there are a lot of reasons why that's an unfair comparison. You're talking about a team book to a solo book. You're talking about, it's just very different. But I wanted to compare it for this reason. If you look at the issue number 1 to issue 31 of Avengers, you've got a 67% trending drop. If you look at Venom, you've got a 69% trending drop. Now, that means Venom dropped more. Well, why did it do that? I mean, the easy answer to that is that Donny Cates Venom number 1 sold higher and then dropped further, where on issue number 2, whereas Jason Aaron's did not sell as many number 1 copies and then didn't have as steep a drop. Why is that? I think Venom was an unknown property. I think the belief was that Marvel's Avengers was going to be stronger overall, so that's why people ordered higher on issue number 2. But in general, it shows a recalibration of sorts that's going on within Marvel, where things like the Avengers is a safe comic. You always order more of number 1, and Venom you order less, and I think the rules are being rewritten. Because then if we go down, we get past the first arc of Aaron's Avengers, and we go from issue 7 to 31, we get a 35% trending drop. Here I'm showing issue 2 to 24, the numbers we were looking at. It's a 16% trending drop. If I go, apples to apples, and I do Donny Cates Venom from issue 7 to 24, then our trending drop is I think it's 15%, because remember there was that bounce up. So it really doesn't change that metric much at all. On average, Marvel books decline faster than DC, and on average, Marvel has a 38% drop. So that means that Donny Cates Venom performed just better than twice as good. Does that make any sense? It was less than half of a drop of most Marvel books, which any way you cut it is a success for Marvel. So there's one more picture I want to show you here. And this is something I haven't shown before, and this is the unit ranking of the book. So this is where did the book show up in the bestseller list, in the unit sales, not the unit sales, the unit list of Marvel. So what this is showing is that issue number 1 was the number 2 comic of the month, and then issue 4 was the 27th comic of the month. And you see kind of how it goes across. You see, once again, this bouncing picture of what's going on in the market. And what does this indicate? Well, a couple things. One, that people are coming in and out of Venom. And 2, that the market has been in an insane amount of flux from 2018 to today. There's a lot of titles moving in. You're seeing publishers like DC and Marvel hotshot more books. And so this ranking is way less stable. So I want you to remember this picture, because as I do comic analysis in the future, you're going to see a more stable line overall for comics that are older. But as soon as we get into about 2018, you're going to see this line get super jagged. And I'm looking for a good run that goes, not something like Spawn, which has been going forever, but something a little bit more steady. I think like Scott Snyder's Justice League, or, even to some extent Jason Aaron's Avengers. I may bring in that picture of how Jason Aaron's Avengers ranked month by month in terms of the comic ranking, and you'll notice a much more steady line until you start to get to late 2017, 2018, and it gets pretty crazy. Overall, on average, if you average it out, Venom is, and then I went ahead and I took out that second annual that really dropped, that super drop, and Venom was the 14th on average comic of all comics each month. It was 14th. So what does that tell us? That tells us, in this case, bad news, because if Donny Cates Venom at times is kind of averaging in the 50s, lower 50s, especially for the second half of the run, well, that lower 50s average is what it takes to be in the top 20. And that is a negative picture, very much a negative picture. That's not good. And we'll get into more of that in the future. Why I want to start showing this graph, because over time you start to realize, especially as you go year by year, that what it takes to be in the top 20 continues to drop. And in this case, that's bad news. But all in all, hey, this is a success story for Marvel. This is not bad news. Donny Cates Venom, considered one of the top-selling books. One that, I'm hoping that this is a little bit different way of looking at things. Informs you a little bit more about what's going on with the comic. And if you have any questions, throw them in the comments below. Like, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do, especially if you're enjoying these numbers. There is a playlist now you can very quickly navigate to just see all the sales numbers in one place. And I hope that's helpful. But yeah, throw 3 likes, 1 like, 2 likes, red likes, green likes. I don't know. Anyway, at any rate, most importantly, thanks for listening.